Well, hello, Doxology family. Pastor Steve here to give you all an update on our church's plan for the upcoming months. Thank you so much to those of you who did fill out the survey that was sent out recently. That was really helpful as our leader team sat down to map out a plan. And so thank you so much for doing that and for your honesty and sharing the feedback that you did. So we took that into account as we made the plan. And so before I give you all the exact steps that we're going to be taking, more important than the precise action steps we do is the framework with which we approach all this. And so what we all have to do, both corporately and individually, is keep at the center of our hearts our union with Jesus and the gospel narrative that we live in. So we don't live as if Jesus Christ is still dead. And we also don't live as if this world is our true citizenship, right? So that makes a big difference through how we process everything. So rather than doing what's natural, which is to make your glasses like COVID-19 and you view everything through the lens of COVID-19, you need to make the glasses through which you view the world your union with Christ and the gospel narrative that we live in. And so, very practically speaking, what this means is you have to look at, okay, where do you err? When it comes to your approach toward this. So whether you tend to want to take a much more slow and cautious approach and you want other people to be slow and cautious when it comes to reopening, or if you're the kind of person who's like, I want everything to be open right now, or wherever you are on that spectrum, how does your union with Jesus impact your fears, your frustrations, your hesitancies? So you have to shift your emotions through that, but also, how does your union with Jesus and the fact that God saved you through grace, how does that lead you to extend incredible patience and grace toward people who are acting differently than you, both outside the church and inside the church, especially inside the church as well? So what we have to do is avoid moralizing our position and acting as if, we have the holy and righteous position to take. There's still so much we don't know as we move forward with this. Okay, so as we go through all this, union with Jesus has to be first and foremost, just like it should be before our politics, and it should lead to, how we approach romance and work. All those things, this pandemic is no different. Okay, so here's the plan that our leader team put together, and what I'm going to do is give you all the high level points. So they put together more details than I'm going to give, but for sake of time, I'm going to give the high level view. And then as we enter into each phase, details will be rolled out. And so also with this, notice that what you'll see is we're following Northern Virginia's guidelines here. So Northern Virginia is taking things more slowly than the rest of the state. And so the common thread you'll see is we're following what Northern Virginia is doing, but with some additional caution. And an asterisk should be on everything that I'm about to give, because anything could change, things could change before you even watch this, but we do need a plan to make it easier to adapt. And so here's what we're going to do. So right now, Northern Virginia is in phase 0. Once Northern Virginia enters phase 1, which right now is supposed to be May 29th. So once Northern Virginia enters phase 1, Doxology will enter phase 1. And this is what it'll look like. So first of all, we're going to wait 2 weeks after Northern Virginia begins phase 1 for us to begin phase 1. Just to allow a little bit more time to go so we can see how things shape out before we implement any changes. Okay, so we're going to wait 2 weeks after Northern Virginia begins phase 1. And here's what we'll do with respect to discipleship groups, community groups, and our in-person church service. So for discipleship groups may meet in person. If you can and you would like to meet as a discipleship group, then you may do that. Now, we realize that people are in all sorts of different situations, both in terms of where you all are located right now and also different temperaments and life situations that you're in. And so this will be on a group by group basis, but you each will decide as a group whether or not you are going to meet in person. And so discipleship group leaders, I'll be following up with you to give you all more precise direction on that. So Virginia is allowing up to 10 people for gatherings, for like social gatherings. And so since discipleship groups are underneath that, you all may meet if you would like to. Okay, with respect to community groups, we are not going to have community groups, or we're not going to encourage community groups to meet in person yet. So community groups just continue to meet virtually during phase one. And then with respect to our in-person church worship services, we are not going to meet in person during phase one. So even though the state of Virginia and Northern Virginia will be allowing religious places of worship to meet as long as they're under 50% capacity, we're going to hold off on this. And we see it one way is just to kind of, again, wait and let things unfold and just see how things are tracking. But two, we want to communicate to our neighbors. It's tricky during a situation like this, but 1 Peter 2:12 talks about keeping your conduct among the Gentiles honorable, so they may glorify God on the day of visitation. And so the idea there is one, we should show people that we value gathering, and it's an irreducible part of enjoying Jesus. And so we want to get back to that as quickly as we can. However, also we want to show people that we're not being overly rash or reckless. And so while there might be an exception for churches to meet, we're just going to hold off during phase one. And so what we will continue to do is we will continue to stream our services just as we've been doing. So please continue to participate and invite people that way. But also, since the state is allowing social gatherings of up to 10 people, if any of you want to gather in small groups in a home for a virtual watch party, if you will, on Sunday worship service, then you may do so. So as long as you're following state guidelines, both in terms of numbers and in terms of safety measures, this applies for discipleship groups as well, you can meet with a few people because I know some of you live alone, some of you really want to be worshiping together in some way, shape, or form, and for some that's going to be appropriate and good. So if you want to meet small group on Sunday to do it, to do the worship service, you can do that. All right, so that's phase one. And phase one will last 2 to 4 weeks or longer is what Virginia is currently telling us. Next is phase two. So when Northern Virginia enters phase two, similar to phase one, Doxology will wait an additional 2 weeks after Northern Virginia begins phase two for us to begin phase two. Discipleship groups will continue to meet in person at the group leader's discretion. Now for community groups, there will be a change. So during phase two, community groups may meet in person at the discretion of the community group leader. So again, lots of different situations that are going to come into play here. I'll be communicating with you community group leaders on ways to navigate this, but that will be an encouraged option to do during phase two. And then with respect to in-person worship gatherings during phase two, we will have worship service in person. Now, we're going to keep our gathering at actually less than 25% of the maximum limit of the building that we're in at Christ Church of Arlington. So capacity is going to be less than 25%. We'll be following social distancing guidelines. We'll have a number of safety measures in place. We're going to have a cleaning team, so it'll be a new team that our church has to make sure everything is clean before and after the service. We're also in regular communication with Christ Church of Arlington so that we're making sure we're loving one another well during this time and not overstepping on our hosts. There will not be a kids ministry, but children may join us for, inside the sanctuary for worship. We only have a couple families in our church right now, so that's the situation there. And there will be a form of a virtual service. And so for those of you who should not or aren't comfortable yet coming to worship service in person, even with all the guidelines that we'll be following, we're still going to be putting together a virtual service for you all. It's likely going to need to be recorded ahead of time just because of the internet situation, among many other things at our church, and it won't be posted until 5 p.m. on Sunday, but we're still going to have that virtual service option for you all who aren't able to come and join us in person on Sundays. So then when we move into phase three, again, we'll be following the state, we'll be following Northern Virginia, and this will be all we're saying about this for now is it'll be another next step toward new normal. Some of the safety guidelines will be eased, but that's as far as we're going with that right now. So we'll approach that as we have a clear idea of how everything is shaping out. And so with the email that I sent to you guys, I'm going to include the blueprint that Virginia put for the plan so you can kind of see what they're saying and how it lines up with what doxology is doing. And I'll also follow up in the coming days with a written copy of what I just said, so you have that to reference as well. So that's it for now. Please reach out if you have any questions or anything you want to share in general. I'm so encouraged by how you all are continuing to be the church and love one another well inside the church and outside the church during this season. I'm really looking forward to seeing you guys when we are able to meet again in person and share moments with you. So until then, just keep worshiping Christ, loving one another, those around you, and I look forward to seeing you again, hopefully sometime soon. Take care.